It's good to speak to you, man. Thank you for doing this today. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
How you been holding up these last few months? Because it's been a learning curve for all of us, I guess, but for you guys, it's been a bit of a life changer.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of get into a routine for almost 20 years, and then all of a sudden you have to stop it. So, coming off the road was a huge adjustment for me. There's been some positives to it, being able to sleep in my own bed every night and not live out of a suitcase and, spend substantially more time with my family, I think has been, a huge positive. But yeah, I miss the road. I miss being able to go out and, make money and just play for the fans and all of that. It just kind of, I know from experience, you take a week or two off from being on the road, you get really rusty. So I can't imagine what I'm going to be like when I finally get to go back to play shows now after being off, several months. So it's going to be kind of scary.
Yeah, well, you're gearing up to release some new music as well. So how has that whole process changed? Because I guess usually when you're about to release an album, you'd be out there doing promo and doing interviews left, right, and centre. But how has that changed in this whole situation?
Well, once again, I've been doing, a lot of my interviews from home and doing a lot of this Zoom stuff, which is in some ways it's been very convenient, but yeah, it's not the same as being in person, but, and I'm hoping I'm going to be back on the road before the record comes out. We've got a lot of stuff to figure out in that area, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things look when that time comes. We're a good, almost a month away, maybe a little more than a month away. And like I say, it's just, I don't want to say that it's going to be a new normal. I think there's going to be some things that are going to be different once we get back on the road, but hopefully things can kind of get back to, the way they were before, but, time will tell. We'll see.
You've got this new album, Country State of Mind. It's coming out August 21st. You've described it as your Mount Rushmore of country music. So how long have you been wanting to do a project like this, and why did this time period feel like the right kind of opportunity for
you? It was pretty organic the way it came about. My manager and I had talked about this idea of doing a record like this, and we went to the label. They were excited about the idea, and so we ran with it, and so it was fairly easy to kind of put the songs together. But the ironic thing was that March of last year, 2019, my family and I actually had to move out of our house because of mold, and we basically had to kind of rebuild our house, which was not something I wish on anybody. It was a nightmarish experience, but because of that, we had to go and live in my writer's cottage, and I'm thankful that we had a place to go to. But with that being said, I didn't have a place to write or be creative or, sit back and try to work on a record. So I think it was God's timing that I was able to do a record like this that didn't require any original material from me during a time like that. And so, like I say, it was just, the Lord's will, I think, for me to be able to do a record like that instead of, something that required me to kind of contribute as a writer. So it all worked out. I'm excited about this. I really kind of poured myself into not just the record, but, the album artwork, the photo shoot, the packaging, all of that, because I think, that's a vital part of any record.
Yeah. Well, how did you decide on the track list for this album? Because I know that your knowledge of classic country is so deep, and your music has always encapsulated lots of different influences from classic country. So how did you narrow it down to 12 songs? Because I guess that's such a difficult process.
Yeah, I even wrote in my album liner notes that this is by no means a comprehensive list. I mean, I could do 5 more records like this and there'd still be songs left over because there's just so many great country songs to be recorded. I started this record with I Can Tell by the Way You Dance. It's an old Vern Gosdin song, and I have just longed for years to get the chance to re-record this song, because I just felt like it's such a timeless song musically and lyrically that I just really felt like it needed a modern treatment and kind of a rebirth, if you will. And so we went in and we did that. And I mean, I think it could be a hit on today's radio. It's that good. And so beyond that, it was fairly easy choosing songs like "I'm No Stranger to the Rain," which I've always felt like was one of the best written country songs in history. You've got songs like "Midnight in Montgomery," which is a definitive Alan Jackson song, and I mean, you got "Good Old Boys," which is a very recognizable song, whether you're a country music fan or not. It was a huge hit for Waylon, and really kind of gained, a whole nother, passel of fans for him. And then, got newer songs like "You Don't Seem to Miss Me" and "Desperately." And then you got really old songs like "The Caretaker" and "Alone and Forsaken," and, even "Why Me," from Chris Christopherson, which is from the early 70s. So it's a big variety of songs, and I didn't want to just entertain my fans with this record. I also wanted to educate them, because I could have easily just filled this record with, the big country classic hits that everybody knows. But what's the fun in that, right?
Absolutely. And you just mentioned how you've brought some of these songs up to date and given them a modern twist. And you've got the likes of Runaway June on there, Maddie Tae, Chris Jansen. How important was that for you to get these modern voices on and give these things a modern twist? Because that must have been a very cool experience for you to do that.
I think it was very important because, for me, when I first got my record deal, I kind of took on that role of responsibility of like, I'm from this, traditional world of country music, but I was young and I was expected to create music to be played on the radio. And so I had to compete. I had to make something new and modern and fresh and still, kind of maintain that traditional integrity. And so artists like Chris Jansen and Runaway June and Maddie Tae, I think, are in that same mold. They kind of come from that same perspective as I do. They realize that they have to compete and they have to, do things to get played on the radio, but they also kind of come from this traditional background and have a respect and an appreciation and a knowledge of where country music came from. So I felt like they were the most appropriate new artist to tackle these songs on this record. The Chris Jansen collaboration actually kind of started. He and I were doing a radio show down in Augusta, Georgia, one night several years ago, and he kind of broke into playing that song. And usually, when you're on a stage doing an acoustic show and you're sharing the stage with all these other artists, like it's always bothered me how some artists, they just kind of chime in and start singing on somebody's song, even if they weren't asked to sing on the song. And so I've never wanted to be accused of that or been guilty of that. But man, when he started singing "Country State of Mind" this one particular night, I couldn't help myself, and I started singing the harmony on it. And he looked over and he was like, "Man, that sounds good." It's like, keep going. And so he and I sang this song together, and the crowd just went nuts. And so "Country State of Mind's always been one of my favorite Hank Jr. songs. And so when it came time to make this record, I was like, man, it'd be cool for me and Chris to sing the song like for real, and record it and do it, for this record. And then when I started thinking about, the title of this record and everything going on in the world, I'm like, man, "Country State of Mind," I think says a lot, because I think that's something that this world could use is for us all to kind of get into a country state of mind.
Absolutely. And you worked with Kenny Greenberg in the studio again, because obviously you worked with him on your last couple of studio projects. So what's Kenny like to work with from your perspective, and how valuable is his expertise when you're working on a new project?
He's a lot of fun. He's just he's a musical genius. He's a great producer. He's a great guitar player. He's probably the one of the best guitar players in the world, really. I mean, he's just incredible. And so to be able to be in the same room with him and to get his take and his perspective on my kind of music is always interesting, because I never really know what he's going to say or what he's going to come up with. But 9 times out of 10, it's a pretty clever idea. And so, he's really brought something new and fresh and cool to my kind of music. And Kenny doesn't necessarily come from a traditional country background, or even a country music background for that matter, but he's, throughout his life and his career, he's played so many different kinds of music that he's just a fan of good music, and he tries to make good music every time he goes in the studio or steps on stage. And so, it's cool because he's actually verbalized and said that, I've taught him a lot about country music, and that's a huge compliment to me, because that's, like I said earlier, that's one of my goals, is to not just entertain, but to educate people about how vast, country music is. When you look at the big country iconic hits, throughout history, even that is just a piece of the puzzle. It's just one piece of the puzzle, because when you look beyond what was a hit on the radio, there's so many other songs that you can sink your teeth into that most people don't even know about or think about. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of those kind of songs, I mean, you've done "Alone and Forsaken," an old Hank Senior song, and obviously "The Caretaker" with Johnny. Is there a feeling of responsibility or pressure that came with doing those songs? Because for a lot of people, you are going to be the kind of torchbearer for those songs, and you might be the first time people have heard those songs. So, is there any kind of intimidation with that?
absolutely. No, not really, because that's what I want. I want people to come to me and say, "Man, I'd never heard that song before," and that led me to go listen to this or this or this. And that's really kind of how it starts. That's how people become fans of a certain type of music or a certain artist. They hear it from an artist that they already are familiar with, and they're like, "Man, I never knew that." So it just kind of, it gets people to kind of look below the surface and start, digging into, really the heart of this genre.
Yeah. And I must ask you about the Randy Travis collaboration as well. You've probably been asked about this like 1,000 times, but it's going to be that one moment on the CD that really sells it for a lot of people. So it was the first time he'd been in the studio since he's had his stroke. So that must have been a huge honor for you, being a big Randy Travis follower over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a historical moment. It was a bittersweet moment. There were some tears shed, in the studio that day. And what was funny was, I had asked Randy, I said, I've seen you do this live several times, which is what inspired me to bring you in here and do this to begin with. And I said, but I just want you to know that, like, you're not obligated to just sing the last word. I said, if you want to sing more than that, by all means, you feel free to do it. And he said, nope. That's all he said was nope. And so I was like, okay, well, just sing the amen then. You got the last word. Randy Travis always gets the last word. So
that's all you need from Randy Travis, one word. Can sell the album.
Yeah, that's right.
But just moving away from the album slightly as well, Josh, I wanted to speak to you about the UK trip that you had last year, because it was a huge success for you. The tickets flew out the door, and your performance at the Long Road as well was a special moment for you. So how was that whole experience for you, and is it something that you'd like to do more often in the future?
That experience was, way better than I think people had kind of set me up for. A lot of people had said, well, when you go to the UK, just know that the fans are really reserved, and if they don't really respond in the way you expect them to, just, don't take offense to that. It doesn't mean that they don't like you, and and all this kind of stuff. So I was kind of bracing myself for that kind of response. But before I had even said one word on the microphone at Union Chapel, I mean, people were going nuts. I mean, it was just, the place erupted. People were throwing babies in the air, and it was an incredible experience. And to have a sold out show at Union Chapel, and we had a sellout show in Manchester, and then just thousands upon thousands of people at the Long Road Festival, and just people out there, just having a great time. The weather was great. I mean, it couldn't have been any better. It was just an incredible experience. The fans, welcomed me with open arms and just treated me like family. And so I had a great first impression, great first experience, and I look forward to going back.
Yeah. I've been watching some of your live streams and the video content that you put on Facebook, and there are always people commenting from like Italy and Germany and Spain, and like fans all over the world. So at some point in the future, can you see yourself doing a kind of a full European tour? Because there is a hunger for your music out there.
Yeah, I'd love to. That was really, a lot of the reason why we went over there last year, was because there's been such a demand for me and my music. And so, there has to be, a strategy behind it. We have to put some thought and some effort into it. And we have to make sure we're making some kind of profit, because it's very expensive to travel internationally and all that, especially when you're taking band and crew and equipment and all that kind of stuff. So, it takes a lot of planning, to make something like that happen. But I'm so thankful that I have that demand from all those different places and all those different countries, so that it makes it easy on that end, once I actually get a plan together and get a tour together to go over there. So that's something that I'm looking forward to doing, throughout the future. And like I said, I'm thankful that the fans, like what I'm doing. So.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, Josh, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate your time, and fingers crossed we can get you back to the UK once all this coronavirus is over, man.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
All right, thanks, Josh. I'll let you go. Speak to you later. Best of the album as well.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Josh.